often they put it right in our face, and it's, if we don't react, then the bad karma is on us. It's up to us to wake up. They will make it obvious. They will put in all of these different hints and clues. It's almost like a Dan Brown novel, I tell you, because there's so much information baked into this pie, and but we need to find the clues.
Hey friends, welcome back. I hope you're having a wonderful year so far as we kick off 2017. I'm very happy to bring back to the show Ole Dammegard. You know his website, lightonconspiracies.com. But before we get into some new false flags we want to discuss, I have some housekeeping I want to do. First, we'll welcome Ole. How are you, sir?
I'm doing absolutely great, thank you. And Happy New Year to you. Happy New Fearless year.
Yeah, fearless indeed. We're going to be fearless, and we will persevere, and we will tell the truth. I mentioned housekeeping. I want to play something for you that you may be aware of, Ole. I was just made aware of it yesterday. Had I found out about this sooner, I'd have made a bigger deal about it sooner. But somebody who I have had a lot of respect for over the years in the truth media, his name's Richie Allen. He had a guest on his program back on December 13th, and the guest was Jim Fetzer. And the name of that video on YouTube is Pizzagate is Real, and I Can Prove It. And the interview with Fetzer I thought was very good, right up to about the 21-minute mark. And then there was this exchange, and I have some very important comments I want to make about it. This exchange includes the mention of you, my friend, Ole Dammegard. Here it is.
Richie, this thing has become enormous. Abby Martin has done a story about John Podesta and Pizzagate on Russia Today. Ole Dammegard has explained that this is only the Pizzagate is only the tip of the iceberg. The Pope has addressed this issue, Richie. And he's even implied it shouldn't even be talked about because it's so horrific. But look at the history of the Catholic Church.
I have a big problem with people like Ole Dammegard and Abby Martin, who's not at RT anymore, but I know what you mean. She's working somewhere else. And the problem I have with them is, you and I, Jim, we've been around a few years. One of the things we want to do is we want to encourage people who've never listened to our programs to consider listening to our programs, to consider the alternative point of view. And the likes of Dammegard, and I'm not singling him out now, but just because you mentioned him, and others, with their proclamations of guilt and this definitely happened and that happened, this is bollocks. Ole Dammegard wasn't there, doesn't know, all he's doing is guessing. And I would rather people like that were a little bit more circumspect, because by doing that, we might get more people listening to our information. What do you say? Over to you.
Richie, I've interviewed Ole Dammegard many times about many issues, including Nice, including Brussels. He is one of the world's leading experts on assassins and assassinations. I say,
according to him,
Ole Dammegard is among the most thorough, patient, and systematic of all investigators out there, Richie, so I take exception to your characterization.
Well, don't take exception to it, Jim. Ole Dammegard is not in Washington, D.C. He's never been to the pizza parlor. It does the independent media no good for these proclamations. It must have happened. It must be true. He knows fuck all about it, Jim. Let's be honest about it.
That's a fantastic straw man. You and I weren't in DC Plaza either, but I have done, with my colleagues, absolutely path-breaking work. We shattered the medical
over years, Jim.
We've exposed the perps.
Jim,
we
over
were in
years.
Plaza, Richie.
I'm going to pause it right there, Ole, and I know you hadn't heard that audio specifically, but I wanted to play it for you simply because of this reason. And I left a comment for Richie Allen. It's under that YouTube video, and it's this. Richie, you should be ashamed of yourself. It's clear that you didn't even listen to my interview with Ole Dammegard titled Pizzagate is Just the Tip of the Iceberg. Ole didn't know anything about Pizzagate, and he made no claims about any of it. And I went on to call Richie an ass for using such language on his program and disparaging one of the world's greatest truth tellers and researchers, and that's you, Ole. I apologize that you had to endure that, and I apologize that he dragged your name through the mud, because that Pizzagate interview that you and I did, that Fetzer referenced, Pizzagate is Just the Tip of the Iceberg, has 139,000 views at this point, and Richie Allen isn't one of those views. He didn't listen to that interview, but he dragged your name through the mud nevertheless.
Listen here, I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to try and find the truth the best way I can find it. And I didn't know that Richie had a problem with me. He never mentioned it. And but it's part of what you do. Like if you go down this road trying to expose what's going on, attacks will be part of it, and sometimes they come from very unexpected angles. And the thing is that he says I'm full of whatever. Regarding Pizzagate, if you remember in the interview that he's referring to, I had not even heard of it hardly, and
That's right.
I questioned it right away, saying I know nothing. I need to really get into the details before I can even make a comment. The only thing I did was to warn about it being a possible distraction away from the major picture, the big picture when it comes to pedophile networking and so on. And that was it. So listen, I'm glad I've been on Richie's shows a few times. I find I really liked him, but he's a tricky radio host, contrary to you, because he keeps interrupting whoever it is he's interviewing, which I find is a bit it's not so good, because I would suggest that if you have a program, you invite people on, then the audience would like to hear the guest, not the host so much. But that's just my point of view.
Yeah, well, and if yeah, and I just want to say this. People know me. I do not in fact, I deplore infighting within the truth community. It is my absolute pet peeve. I do not do it. I do not engage in it. So this is really, go through all my interviews. This is one of the first times I've ever called out anybody, and it's because Richie was dead wrong. And he's taking heat in the comments section here. One of the top comments says, Richie, you need to listen to the SGT Report interview with Ole Dammegard. Ole doesn't take a specific view on Pizzagate. He suggested it was probably a trap for people. And then another comment goes on to say, Richie Allen is really annoying to listen to, made it to the 24 mark, but after his latest don't know fuck all comments, that's it for this listener. I can't take it anymore. So I just, look, I wanted to bring this up because when one of the people who's a friend of mine, who's an honorable person, gets attacked publicly, it's like attacking me. And I felt responsible because he was running with the ball. Based on Fetzer's mention of our interview, Pizzagate is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's clear that Richie Allen didn't listen to that interview, which definitely makes what he did there the furthest thing from journalism. All right, so I'm sorry I had to do that. I just wanted to clear the air on that. If Richie Allen would like to talk to me and have an interview about this, he can certainly contact me, or I'm sure you'd be willing to speak with him too, Ole, correct?
Yeah, anytime. But I just want to point out, do you remember the thing that was brought up in that interview was these two photos of what is now claimed to be these brothers. And I said, where did they come from? When did they come? And so on, because there were never, as far as I know, any talks about there being two people searched for. And I've checked it up now, and these were, the release, as far as I know, was in 2013. And according to the police, these two photos are of, or descriptions, are of one of the same individual. That they say these are two descriptions of the same person. And I don't think they look anywhere near each other. So I would put a question mark around this whole thing and see, is this part of a psyop or what's going on here? It's very odd, to say the least.
Yeah, and you're talking about the images that the police released of the two suspects that very, very closely resemble John and Tony Podesta, and you're absolutely right. It makes no sense that that one suspect could look like two different people, both of whom resemble the Podestas, who appear to be involved in some measure of pedophilia, possibly child trafficking, which is what we discussed in that interview. And we said allegedly a million times. There needs to be a legitimate investigation. And one of the conclusions I've drawn about that sketch, Ole, is that I think it was an open threat to those two, to the Podesta brothers, because I personally think they're part of a larger child trafficking ring, and to make those images public would have had no impact at the time because nobody knew about Pizzagate. The WikiLeaks emails hadn't been released. They meant nothing to anyone except for those two men, but now they mean something to all of us as we dig deeper down into the Pizzagate rabbit hole. All right, so now we're going to go into some other rabbit holes. Go ahead.
Can I just comment there again? I think you might be spot on when it comes to these things. Anyone interested, please check out Richard D. Hall's films and videos around. I think he is the expert around this case. And just like you say, it seems like there's something else going on than what is obvious to the eye, because just like nobody knew about these brothers in 2013, and then boom, here we are. But when you look at, if you find this too incredible to believe, please see the involvement of the BBC and the police Scotland Yard when it comes to being part of these paedophile networks, and also the cover up of them. So for BBC programs and so on to be involved in covering it up or putting out threats like this is not sort of taken out of thin air. And also, it's very interesting, at least I find it, that very often when you see these so-called news clips and so on, it's from ITN Productions, not a news company, not ITV News, but ITN Productions, which is a theater and TV series production company. So what are we looking at? What are we looking at?
Yep, very interesting. We know about crisis actors being used in all sorts of different events, and maybe we'll get to some of that today as we talk about the December 19th Berlin truck attack. We're going to talk about the murder of Andrei Karlov, the Russian ambassador to Turkey, who was assassinated in Ankara. We may even get to the Istanbul nightclub attack, but we're going to try to keep this entire call to around an hour, Ole, so we're already about 14 minutes in. So where would you like to start? You want to start with the Berlin attack?
I would like to say, as always, it's very important not to jump to any conclusions. So I'm just gonna point out a lot of things that I think doesn't match up with the official story. And please be aware that there were absolutely no attacks, so-called terror attacks here in Europe during the American elections. No, nothing, zero. It stopped before that. Before it was very intense, and then stopped. The elections took place, and then nothing until the 19th, more or less, of December, when suddenly there were 3 in one day. And that was the exact same day as it was officially sealed that Trump wins as president. So my question is that a coincidence, or are we looking at these things being played out together? Because I would very strongly suggest that what we've seen the last few years is like a game of chess being played out in front of our eyes. And the players involved are NATO countries and the US. Israel is very strong, the Mossad is very strong, the presence of Mossad is very strong in all of these operations and so on. And we will see here again, there's very specific signs of them.
Well, may I jump in and just say one thing as it relates to the Nice, France terror attack? Researchers were able to find out very quickly that there was a Mossad connection in the videotaping of that incident. And how strange now to have another truck attack, this time in Berlin, and I'll just turn it back over to you. But lots of questions about that Nice, France attack, and as Fetzer rightly pointed out in that interview with Richie Allen, it was our friend Ole Dammegard who has done so much research into the Nice, France attack. All right, back to you.
Now, I also want to say that contrary to what Richie says, I've been on more or less on location on more or less all of the operations that have taken place in Europe since 2000 and I don't know 7 or 8 or something like that, with an undercover camera trying to expose what's going on and so on. So I really try to build a case before I say anything. Anyway, so here we are. 3 attacks in one day, one in Berlin, where we have a more or less copy of the Nice attack. Then we had in Ankara, the Russian ambassador shot by a policeman. Absolutely no blood. Once again, all the Allah Akbar shouting as part of the same theme again and again. And then there was a mosque shooting in Zurich, in Switzerland. Sean, can you see, you got the slideshow, yeah? Sorry, I break here.
Yes, I have them right here, and we're bringing your video online here too as well, so people can see you, Ole. So yeah, I have the slideshow right here.
So if I say the numbers, then you just put it in.
Yep, that's right. Right now I'm on 8. I was jumping ahead, okay. So let me back up.
Yeah, go back to 4, please.
I am on 4. You got it.
Okay, so if I'm correct, and I've been doing many interviews, 2-hour interviews on all the different events that I've been. So when this happened in Berlin, I was just like, oh my God, not again, please. Happened just before Christmas, and some of the first images that was pumped out was this image from RT, where the whole scene is in gold, and you see that the truck, it looks like a parcel, like a Christmas present, wrapped in golden paper. If you go to slide 6, you will see that this is not the actual color at all. Exactly, the truck itself is dark blue or black, contrary to the white truck from Nice. We have black and white. There will be a lot of Freemasonic symbolism in these things. And then the back of the truck is silver, not gold at all. So if we go to slide 7, my God. So the thing is, the official story said that there is this mad terrorist, Tunisian guy, 24 years old, who hijacked a truck, a Polish truck, killed the driver. He was officially found dead in the passenger seat. And then he hijacked this truck. He was driving around in Berlin where with GPS they could track where he was more or less. But around the time when this happened, they could not any longer see where the GPS signals came from, or at least they kept changing the story. But there was a taxi cab that had a dash cam and it filmed when this attack happened. It's standing very close to the Christmas market in central Berlin, and you see suddenly this truck comes like a silhouette from the left in about 40 miles an hour and just heads right into this whole Christmas market, where it's said to have gone in and just run over multiple individuals, killed 12 people, and wounded some around 48 to 50 people in there. So horrific if you see what they claim, if what that is true. My God, I can't speak today. Sorry about that. But if you go to slide 8, you will see that the truck actually bypasses the entrance into the Christmas market. It does not go into the Christmas market, but it bypasses. It continues and goes down further down the street. The official story said that the truck went into this area. If you go to slide 9, the official story said that the truck came in. If you look at the lower part of this image to the right, that is where it entered in. We're talking about a 10 to 12 meter long truck. It's a Scania that went in there with a trailer. Then you can't see the brake light coming on when it passes the cab. So it's going full speed into the area. Then it makes almost like a 90-degree right and then a 90-degree left right away. Just like, in front of the Texas School Book Depository with a motor cage. But you cannot do it like that. It is impossible to do that without causing massive damage to the huts on both sides, or you would have skid marks or something like that. Then the distance from where it entered until it exited of this whole area is about 50-60 meters. And you have here the official number of casualty is around 60. So there would be loads of people massacred here. It's not a pretty sight if a truck goes right across you. So we should see an absolute slaughterhouse here. But what we see is no blood, no traces of wounded, nothing. Go to slide 10. You will see there that then instead of continuing, if we're talking about a mad terrorist, whose aim is to kill as many people as possible, why didn't he just continue down the lane in the Christmas market and hit another 200-300 people, while he was at it? But here, after 50 meters, he goes straight left, it says, and out, and then he stops. Then the official story said that he runs out of the truck and disappears. Nobody has seen him. And unfortunately, just as always, there's no CCTV footage from any angle. All the cameras miraculously was turned off, as they always are. Standard when it comes to these things. Okay, so if you go to slide 11, let's have a look at some different images when we start zooming in. And there's especially one that I love, absolutely love. And it's like there are some metal poles all the way along this whole area. They stand with about 6 feet distance in between, and these, I think they're called boulders in English. These are made for people not to be able to park or do anything with them. They are hard, they are heavy duty, you do not move them without massive damage to your car. And here, if you see the truck, the position of that boulder in slide 11 is right behind the truck. There is no truck that has passed across it. There is no truck that could pass across it without knocking it over and causing massive damage to the vehicle. You go to slide 12, you will see from a different angle, you can see that it is behind the truck. It is not that it was a telelens that confused the distance. It is actually behind the truck itself. So if you go to slide 13.
Well, let me jump in and just say now, guys, Ole's taking me through this for the first time. I've not followed this particular attack very closely at all, so I don't know anything about any of the evidence that would suggest that this was anything other than what the official story is. But in that particular image on 12 there, Ole, it does look like the truck could have fit just between that stanchion pole and the house, for lack of a better word. I mean, just the right distance to squeeze through there. And then is that a big scratch, do you think, on the left part of the truck that might have been left from the stanchion rubbing against the truck?
If you go to slide 13.
Okay.
This is the distance between them. They are very, very tight. You go to slide 14. You see that is exactly where the truck was standing. It is that's 6 feet in between. No way you can have a massive big Scania truck in between these two. And this photo where the encircles are taken afterwards. So you will see the lower image down in the right-hand corner. That is where the truck was next to it. And the other one is too close, so there's absolutely no way that a truck could have passed in between it. Not even a normal car would manage to get in between these two. And there's also a cafe owner of a coffee shop that was right opposite when this whole thing happened. And he was very confused. He was interviewed on TV, and he said, I didn't even understand what happened because I thought that the truck reversed into position. And this is exactly, I would suggest, what has happened here. If you go to slide 15, when you see these operations, you will see here in Europe, it's the same players again and again and again from the different NATO countries. We're talking about France, Germany, Belgium, we're talking about Denmark and England. These, and also Turkey. These are the 6 main players the last few years, where it's the same people again and again and again that appears. And here, if you look at the image in the upper right corner, that is the French President François Hollande with the German foreign minister. They were together at the football game at the stadium at the massive big attacks on November 13 last year, when it said that there were all these mass shootings and so on in central Paris at the Bataclan massacre and so on. And Hollande is sitting here with the German foreign minister, who is now there again on site with Angela Merkel, who was also very closely involved in these incidents, I would suggest. There's also in these images, like I said, often certain of these images, they pump in a lot of symbolism and things that will go to your subconscious without you really understanding it. And if you go to 16, I'm just suggesting here that we have this, if you look at what's in front of these people, it looks similar, very similar to the Syrian flag with the 2 green stars, the red stripe, the white stripe, and so on. I'm pointing things out. I'm not saying it is for sure that this is exactly what happened. I'm just pointing it out.
Okay.
Also, we have, when it comes to, if you go to 17, among the victims, there are no German victims named with names at all. absolute zero. And they're like, I think there's about 8 of these memorial things, massive, big, with flowers and candles and so on, but no photos of victims, nothing, no notes, personal notes to the victims, and an absolute zero, just candles, flowers, and then you have 2 photos. I've only been able to find 2 photos of the Polish truck driver that was killed, shot dead inside the truck, they say, and then a Polish, an Israeli victim who's there. The Israeli flag is there as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is an anomaly because in every single one of these legitimate attacks where people have actually perished, there's teddy bears and pictures and flowers and more pictures and people crying and telling the stories to cameras of the loved ones they lost. So this is very unusual, and also maybe noteworthy that we have the Star of David and the Israeli flag there on display in this particular picture, but nothing else.
I would suggest it's because people are becoming so aware of these false flag operations and are becoming so good at spotting what's going on. So, and also tracking down victims, families, and so on, because this is one of the things that I do. I try to go on location. I try to track down the victims, the claimed victims. Where are they? Where are the graves? Where are the death certificates? Where are the birth certificates? Where did they go to school? Where were the funerals and so on? And when you get there, they're not there. Many of these victims that are claimed are still alive. There was one female suicide bomber that blew herself up in Belgium. I found her in Morocco. I've got an interview that's on YouTube with her. She's saying, I have no idea what's happened. I wasn't involved at all. I don't know why they used my identity. There were 2 victims after the Bataclan here in Spain, claimed dead. They're alive. They're in the media here saying, I have no idea why they used our identities and so on. I just want to put big question marks around these things.
Yeah, so I would just say too, as it relates to 9/11, we know that some of the Saudi Arabian hijackers that were named and pictured were found alive. And
9.
Pardon me?
9. They're still pilots, commercial pilots.
Yeah, and I would just say this because I make the mistake a lot in these interviews, Ole, of assuming that everyone knows the history of these false flag attacks that you and I know and so many of the listeners know. But there are new people, and to anyone to whom this stuff is new, research Operation Gladio. I don't think Gladio ever stopped, Ole. I think it's still being carried out to this very day. And the George Webb series of videos, where's Eric Braverman, who is the former CEO of the Clinton Foundation, a very important series people can watch. Just Google George Webb on YouTube. Where is Eric Braverman? I think it was the Day 73 video in which George Webb makes the case that Operation Gladio is alive and well in the United States as well. He provides some of the documentation that might suggest the funding mechanism for that. Operation Gladio are false flag operations. Sometimes real people die, sometimes not. All right, back to you, Ole.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important what you just said. Gladio is key in this whole thing. Also look into the strategy of tension, the CIA strategy of tension, of how to inflict fear in modern society, how to unleash random violence to create panic among the population so that we will welcome more and more surveillance, more and more control, more and more militarized police and so on. That is the whole idea with these operations. Also, there's another one called Operation Chaos, which is also random acts of violence that will just make people in fear mode. That's the whole idea. So if you go to slide 18, these are the only 3 victims that are visible. And once again, we have very, very blurry footage. It's like you go down with your cell phone or mobile phone and you film whatever. And it's sharp. Nowadays, it's HD and so on. But every time there's one of these attacks, it's super blurry. And the camera is always pointed downwards. You cannot see, you cannot really make out people's faces and so on. And in this short stretch, there's said to be at least around 60 people hit or killed by this truck. The only image, and this is from a German journalist who was there 90 seconds after it happened. You can see when he's walking around and at what point he panned the camera so that you see the clock on the church tower, and you go backwards, you time it backwards, and you can see that he started filming about 90 seconds after the attack is said to have happened. So he came right after it. There should have been dead bodies and massacre and screaming and all of these things at the same time when he was walking around there. He's walking around very calmly. There are old ladies with handbags walking around. Nothing is there except 3 victims. No screaming. You don't see any blood. It looks like blood, but this is Glühwein. It's mulled wine. Is one of the first of these huts, Christmas huts, that was serving that. So it runs out and it looks like blood. It is not. It's mulled wine.
Well, how many people are said to have died in this attack?
12, and then some 48 injured. So the only 3 visible after 90 seconds after the attack are these 3.
Yeah.
That means that you would have at least you would have some 55, 56 people underneath the truck itself, because that's the only thing you cannot see.
Yeah, where are the victims? It's a cogent point, and one of the points I've made in the past, Ole, as it relates to some of these attacks, is that the Smith-Mundt Act was done away with by our criminal Congress critters here in this country, which now allows our government to spew propaganda domestically to the people. Now, in the event of these types, and of course this didn't take place in the United States, but in these types of events, especially where no one perishes, if we can surmise that that's the case here, who's to say this isn't just elaborate propaganda? Because if the state is allowing itself, as it is in this country, to dispel propaganda to the people, who's to say what form that propaganda would take? It could certainly manifest itself in the form of events, staged events. Just a thought.
No, I think you're spot on, and this is what I've been trying to show these last few years, because I call this a global tour of terror. It is, I would suggest, we're looking at a small little, like a theater group that is on an international tour, a small little group of crisis actors, directors. You got a marketing agency that comes up with slogans and logos. You got military experts, you got people with expertise in bombs and explosives, smoke bombs, these type of things. You got people, I would suggest the same people running around in SWAT team uniforms in Canada as in Australia, as in Denmark, as in Paris, and so on. These companies it's through NATO and Gladio this is connected. And this is why I've spent a lot of time trying to identify the facials, sort of the facial structure of many of these people involved, to compare them with different operations from different countries. And at times I've been able to pinpoint more than one.
You know what occurs to me? Let me just tie this together, though, as it relates to the child sex trafficking pedophile rings that we've been focusing on lately because of Pizzagate. One of the most important revelations that I think we now all completely understand, and people from all walks of life are starting to wake up to this, is that the mainstream media is in bed with the governments, to the extent that, for instance, in the case of Pizzagate, in our country here, Ole, the media is covering up the story and calling it fake news, inviting some of the people that have been alleged to be involved in this onto shows, onto Fox News for PR moments, for 10-minute quote-unquote interviews that are not interviews, they're PR moments for these people to defend their character without answering any of the tough questions. My point is this. When something like this happens and it goes out over the news wires and then it's disseminated internationally by CNN and BBC, it just becomes fact in the minds of the people without any real questions ever being asked. And that's why the work you do is so damn important. Because as we know now, because of Pizzagate, because of the Hampstead cover-up, because of Jimmy Savile, the mainstream media globally is in bed with the governments in covering these things up. My thought. Back to you.
I mean, if you had Al Capone as president and you had Al Capone as the owner of the media, the main media sources. I mean, now we have the powers behind the so-called president, who are very much the same people who owns the media. I mean, I think there's about 6 different companies that controls all media in the US. And then you go globally with Rupert Murdoch and so on, where you see it's the same people controlling that media. Would you then be confused or surprised if any kind of critical journalism against the mob, the Chicago mob where Al Capone was in control, was not objective? You would not. But this is what we see here. You cannot, I would suggest, trust mainstream media at this time, journalism on that level. You cannot. We, the normal people, need to do it ourselves. And then use what I call Farmer Brown logic. 1 + 1 = 2. Just look at it, the evidence, and see what makes sense and compare it to the official story. And we're back to the magic bullet, where they're still, after 50 years, trying to convince us that that magic bullet went through 2 bodies and causing all of these different wounds on Kennedy and Colony, instead of seeing what did the real evidence actually show. So let's go back to Berlin here again. Slide 19. So we have many claimed dead people and wounded people. So there should be ambulances everywhere. There should be, and you see that. You see the lights going blum, 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 as you always see. But what photos are there of the victims? There are no photos. There's nothing. And the only photos that are released, the few I found, you will see that it's the same ambulance crew carrying out victims. There are 2 victims as far as I know. You see it's the same 2 people from the ambulance, but the victims, you cannot see their faces. The top one you can't even see, is it a body or not, or is it a dead body? If it was a dead body, why is the white sheet not soaked with blood? Because the only way you can get killed by a truck is through a massacre. I mean, you would look horrible if you got killed by a truck. And then the lower picture, you can only see a foot. That's it. So what do we see? We don't see anything really. We go to slide 20. Here we have the truck, the claim truck. I mean, it looks extremely dramatic. Oh my God. So compare it to the Nice truck that killed, was it 84 people and injured some 202, I believe these are the numbers. White truck, 0 blood. I mean, nothing, 0, no body tissue, no pieces of cloth, no nothing, even though it's said to have killed all of these people. And here we are back to this truck, which there's absolutely no damage to it, no blood, no nothing. It is a bit dented in the front and so on. But if you look at the spoiler, the lower spoiler and where the lights are and stuff, there's no damage where this metal pole or boulder would have been knocked over. That should have just squashed right into it. Most of these pieces on a truck is made by plexiglass. They're not even metal or steel. So it should have made a massive impact. Then you have the front shield, the window shield that is crushed. You have a look at it, you really look at it, and it looks very dramatic because there's a Christmas tree sticking in through the window. But a Christmas tree is very soft. And I tell you, if you try to break into a car nowadays, you take a rock and you just throw it against the window and think it will break. It will not. Nowadays, it's quite hard to break a window, and like this, massive impact is needed. Also, when you look at the truck that is said, it's said that it went down this alley between these huts. There's nothing hard that could do damage like that to a window. Also, you see the lighting, the Christmas lighting. It's very beautiful. There are all of these long lines with light bulbs hanging, making it really beautiful. But the height of those are lower than the height of the truck. The truck should have just pulled the whole thing down, but it hadn't. It's still there. You can see in the footage when the guy runs around or walks around very calmly filming the whole thing. It's not there. It's still there. I mean, it should have been pulled down.
Well, let me just jump ahead here to slide 21 because this reminds me of 9/11 too. The curious matter of ID papers left behind, like the magic passport that flew out of one of the planes at Ground Zero on 9/11, so conveniently found the day of the attack by the FBI. Okay, what do we know about this terror suspect, Ole?
No, but it's like, just like you say, 9/11, the passport, the only thing that survived, a passport there. And of course, it was a national flight. So of course, as a suicide, on a suicide mission, the thing you remember is your passport. Same with Charlie Hebdo. What have I got? I've got my Kalashnikov, my black clothes, my balaclava, and of course I mustn't forget my driver's license. So the two brothers that is claimed to have done the shooting brought their ID and left it in the car. Only one slight problem: the car that was used when they allegedly shot this French police officer that everybody's seen rolled around on the pavement being shot in the head. Not. That is a Citroen C3 from 2014 with extra lights in the front and chrome side mirrors. But the car where the ID was found after the Charlie Hebdo attacks was a Citroen C3 from 2013 with black side mirrors and no extra light in the front, not even the same vehicle.
Yeah, guys, he's talking about the Charlie Hebdo attack, and I know that one well because I did a video about that particular part of the incident in which the police officer is said to have been shot at close range, and you can clearly see that the bullet did not hit his head. Whatever it was hit the pavement. I did a video about that, and it was the first strike I ever got on YouTube. And they said it violated the community guidelines, suggesting that I'd shown something violent, when in fact I was trying to disprove the violence that the mainstream media was showing over and over again on the news. But the minute I show it on YouTube and say, okay, there's something going on here other than what we're hearing from the official sources, what's going on here? I got flagged by YouTube. Anyway, the Charlie Hebdo case is what Ole was referring to there. All right, so back to the Berlin terror suspect and the curious matter of the ID papers left behind.
Let me just continue on the Charlie Hebdo one. I've even rolled in the exact same position where the guy was said to have been shot. I've been filming the whole thing on location and so on. It's not correct what you say. Most people think that there was a ricochet on the pavement. It's not. If you go frame by frame by frame, you will see that the alleged police officer rolls over, and what looks like a ricochet is actually a smoke bomb that he detonates from his left hand. If you go step by step, it's a small little black canister that explodes and sends a smoke thing up and to the right in an angle. That guy is doing well. He's in Buenos Aires. He was paid $666,000 for his part.
Wait a minute. Are you serious? That particular person, you know for a fact, was paid. Now, there's a strange number too. You want to talk about numerology and how numbers are important to these people. He was paid $666,000?
Yeah, and he's told to stay in Buenos Aires for 6 years before he's allowed to come back.
How do you know that? What's his name?
This is, I've got it here, I can find it for you. It's from an insider from the Rothschild family who's informed us about this.
Now that's very fascinating because my whole point about making that video, Ole, was just to say the official story is not true because that man was not shot in the head, period. And I got flagged for it. Okay, very interesting. Well, guys, this is why we have Ole Dammegard on, and Richie Allen can take a flying leap.
The filming. Do you remember we had Richard Gutjahr in Nice, who was married to a very high up
former Mossad person,
and member of the Knesset.
Yeah.
Okay, Einat Wilf. But then the person who filmed in Paris, was he a Parisian or somebody who was on a holiday or something? No, he was one of the chief editors of, I think, Channel 2 of Israeli TV. I mean,
Ole, now that you've opened up that can of worms, we may as well just call a spade here. Most of the time, these roads lead us back to Israel and the Mossad, don't they? Often, certainly often.
No, the CIA, Mossad, and MI6 are the things that pop up all the time. But in Europe, I would say the last a year and a half and two, the Mossad presence have been extremely obvious. It's coming out more and more. And I'll get to that shortly as well.
Well, and let's just remind folks, Ole, what is the Mossad's slogan? By deception, thou shalt do war.
Yeah, and they are experts in terrorism. I mean, the whole Knesset, the first Knesset all of them were former terrorists, all the top ones. So it's really not coming as a major surprise, I would say.
Yeah, I think the world's waking up, though. I mean, I think the world is waking up in droves, and this is not, by the way, anti-Semitism to say that there are terror actors in charge of many of the agencies of government within Israel. Any more than it's anti-American to say the same is true in our own government. So we need to clean out. We need to drain the swamp, as has been said by the president-elect, and I hope it happens, because it's not anti-Semitism to point the finger at the people responsible for much of what we're seeing, be it the CIA, the Mossad, MI6, or all three of those agencies working in tandem. And let's not forget the Saudis, too. My God, the Saudis are up to their eyeballs in terror activity.
I just want to say, for me, I don't care who did it. I'm looking at a crime. I'm looking at a crime scene, and I'm tracking down the guilty ones. That's it. I don't know. For me, it's not a personal thing or racism or anything like that. But this is what is being used against researchers. As soon as you even mention Israel is the one you're not allowed to mention, they hit you with that one. But let me get back to this one. If you go to slide 22.
Well, we didn't talk about slide 21.
No, we did not. We go to slide 21.
And let's do this, because my hope was to keep this to about an hour, just because, I think we tend to lose people after an hour, but this is so important. We're about more than 45 minutes into it. I'm not asking you to hurry. I'm just making you aware of the clock, because I still would like to get to the assassination of the Russian ambassador, which is extremely important geopolitically. So slide 21.
But Sean, why don't we do it like this? We just do our thing. And then whenever it's finished, and you can make like two parts, one about Berlin and one about the ambassador, and then you can air it whenever or not.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, guys. Well, then we'll make this part 1, which will be the Berlin truck attack, and then part 2 will very likely be the Russian ambassador to Turkey who was assassinated in Ankara. All right, slide 21, Ole.
Then I don't feel so stressed either. So
yeah,
excellent.
Fair enough.
Okay, so slide 21. Once again, they find the driver's license of a terrorist. I mean, as usual, if you hijack a truck or you go on a suicide mission, let's not forget to bring the passport or the driver's license. It's just that it's quite interesting with this guy, because once again, it's a guy that is claimed that he's from Tunisia. Now, the truck driver in Nice was also claimed to be from Tunisia with a double citizenship. And that guy was alive. He filmed himself the day afterwards, really confused in Tunisia, saying, I have no idea why I'm being blamed for this. I wasn't even in France. Okay, so this time, Tunisian again. And with this driver's license, it's a bit confusing, because as far as I know, the guy did not have a driver's license. Also, we have the thing that he came first to Germany, applied as a refugee, applied for asylum, did not get it. He stayed there, and then he started doing a lot of crimes, they said, on a low level. So he was put to jail for 4 years, which is a bit unusual. If you haven't even got permission to stay in a country, would they jail you? No, they would deport you. They wouldn't put you in jail. But he was in 4 years in German jail. Then he came out, and he was under surveillance of security agencies in Germany, which is also standard with all of these different operations. They always claim to have had this guy under their radar, and then, unfortunately, they didn't do anything about him. Okay, so it is said that this driver's license was found in the truck under the seat, but if you check out the Scania model, there are no empty areas underneath the seat. It's sort of sealed all the way down, so you can't really put a driver's license there, especially one that he didn't have. And officially, he's been to other countries with fake IDs, and he officially used 6 different aliases. And then after this truck, he disappeared. He went from Germany through 3 countries and ended up in Italy, where the police stopped him without knowing who he was officially, and then he opened fire and they killed him.
Convenient.
End of story.
Yeah,
And
convenient.
then they managed to identify this person who didn't have an ID to start with and say, this is the guy. How did they do that? And it's the same, you know, the 7/7 bombings in London. They claimed there were 4 suicide bombers that pulled this whole thing up. Okay, one of the guys' passport was found in 3 different subway stations. The same passport in 3 different subway stations. And then they also found his driver's license. But he did not have one. I mean, go figure.
Well, look, 7/7 is close to my heart. I've played this soundbite a million times from Peter Powers, and I'll play it right now.
Today we were running an exercise for a company, bearing in mind I'm now in the private sector, and we sat everybody down in the city, 1,000 people involved in the whole organisation, but the crisis team. And the most peculiar thing was we based our scenario on the simultaneous attacks on the Underground and mainline station. So we had to suddenly switch an exercise from fictional to real. And one of the first things is, get that bureau number. When you have a list of people missing, tell them. And it took a long time.
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario.
Almost precisely. I was up until 2 o'clock this morning because it's our job, my own company, Advisor Consultants. We specialise in helping people to get their crisis management response. How do you jump from slow time thinking to quick time doing? And we chose a scenario with their assistance which is based on a terrorist attack because they're very close to a property occupied by Jewish businessmen. They're in the city.
Peter Powers explaining that the exact same scenario was playing out in a real-time exercise that they were doing behind the scenes when the exercise essentially went live and they sprung into action. Statistically, impossible.
And there again, you have Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, who keeps popping up right after these events. So if we go to slide 22, if you notice here, we have the truck, we have some emergency vehicles, and we have a yellow bus. What is the yellow bus doing there? Well, when it comes to more or less all of these events, when they are staged events, they are using crisis actors and they need crew, people with equipment and help to, bouncers to check that nobody from the outside enters the area. All of these people need transport to get in on location, and they always use buses. You will see that after these shootings at the Bataclan or wherever it is, people or wounded are being transported out in buses, on location, I would suggest, and out. Same buses being used. Here, when you see the dash cam footage where the truck first is said to have entered into the Christmas market, what I mentioned to start with, you will see that afterwards the cab with the dash cam goes around the corner and there is this yellow bus with hazard lights. So it's already there, and then it's here. You will see it on footage the day after. If you go to the next slide, slide 23, it's still there, daylight, inside the shut-off area, inside the crime scene. So it is definitely part of something, I would suggest. And my strong suggestion, this is how they got all the stuff in there, out there. You can fit in about 100 people in a bus like that. So check out how many people were part of this thing when it was filmed. People lying in the street, people helping them, walking up and down, about 100 people. So you will also see around the truck, there's a lot of debris in the street and so on, but there's footage where this debris was not there to start with when the truck was there, but people there sort of putting it out on the sides of the truck and up against the truck, making it look more dramatic. So if we go to slide 24, very often, if not always, these operations are carried out on a specific date and on a specific location, not by chance. It is on Memorial Day, it's on the national holiday like the Bastille Day in Nice. People are being killed on Halloween or Valentine's or specific dates, very specific dates. And also the numerology that I'm not an expert on, but here we have the 19th of December, that's 9112. and so on. I'm not sure about the date, but I think that is more to do as a distraction, a major distraction away from the Trump, what do you call it, like approval of him as a president. But also, you will see again and again and again that is repeated, and on a very symbolic position, location, something very symbolic has happened there. When it's very often the streets are in the form of a pyramid, or it's on a place where people used to be executed, or there used to be a Freemasonic massive big lodge. There's very often in this position an obelisk-shaped building or an obelisk. And here we are again, right outside where this truck was. I mean, we're talking like 100 feet, maybe 200 feet from where the truck was standing, where it exited. It's said to have exited. Instead of just continuing down, it's right in front of this church. And this church is extremely important. It is the symbol of Berlin. It's the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church. And it's one of the few buildings that was left after the bombings of Berlin, where the whole city center was there was nothing left. It was just rubble and stone. And this church was there. So they left it the way it is. They rebuilt the church inside it, and then next to it, they erected an horribly looking obelisk-shaped new type of church. Very, very ugly indeed. I mean, it is extremely ugly, and you got its sister or brother on the other side of the church. I mean, that is extremely ugly. And the whole area is very surrounded with obelisks in different locations and so on. I'll get back to that.
All right, this next image is pretty gripping. Why don't we jump ahead to this one, image 25.
25 here, it's a Polish truck, and you will see in these operations they try to involve as many nationalities as possible when it comes to the attacker has often dual citizenship, so they involve more than one country there. Then you have the victims. If there's like 20 victims, you will have like 12 different nationalities or stuff like that to involve emotionally more and more people. Because if you're from Holland, if somebody's killed from Sudan, you don't care. But if it's a Dutch person, if you're from Sweden, well, thank God there were no Swedes killed. Well, if there's Swede involved, your emotions gets going. So here we have again multiple nationalities, even though we're talking like 50 yards in a Christmas market, and you got multiple nationalities, very few Germans though. And the news crews that were there even before the German news were there, it was the BBC and the CNN. I mean, what are the chances? Same with Charlie Hebdo, same with many of these other things. They are there on standby, right next to the whole thing, ready on a cue to boom and in and pump the official story out. So here, the truck and the dead truck driver was from Poland, and you will see a tendency with these latest false flags or alleged terror attacks that they're going more and more towards countries in the East, that the former Eastern Bloc and so on, that has not been involved before. I'm not sure why this is, but I think they're trying to expand sort of the feeling of terror. I don't know the bigger picture. I leave that to other researchers. I'm focused more on a street level. So it was a Polish truck this time, and the owner of the company his name is Ariel Surawski. This guy is not only Polish, but he's also Jewish. And there is a photo of him together with the Israeli ambassador to Poland, Shewa Weiss, where the owner of the truck, he was there as a Jewish cultural festival being photographed with him. He has his book and so on. I'm just pointing out the connection. I'm not saying that this is exactly it, but I think it needs to be pointed out. Okay, so if we go to slide 26. Okay, Sean, I would like to ask you, what are the chances that one of the major worldwide known terror experts from Israel was on location. What are the chances? Well, the professor of politics and terrorism, his name is Shlomo Shapiro, he was actually in the Christmas market just minutes before it happened, and then took a bus. So he was sitting on the bus, leaving the area when the attack happened. So he heard the sirens and all of these things. And then now he's on media talking about this whole thing. He's invited to all of these different programs. He normally works at the university as a terror expert in Tel Aviv. What are the chances? I'm just asking, what are the chances?
Statistically impossible, I would say, but that's just me using logic.
Then if you take the final one, slide 27, you will see here, if you go on Google Earth, you have exactly the same pattern like on so many of these other locations, that the streets are where they carry out these operations. There is like a pyramid shape when it comes to the street formation. If this was only one time, I wouldn't even point it out, but it's repeated again and again and again. And here we have the same thing with where the streets are formed like in a pyramid, pointing straight towards this obelisk next to this church. That is exactly where this terror attack happened. And also, one of the things that I found being repeated again and again with these operations is that often they use the public library as, I would suggest, the area to prepare where this is often it happens on a holiday or a weekend or something like that. So it's closed for the public. And this is a perfect area where they can prepare the crisis actors, makeup, all of these type of things. There are logistics, cafeteria, bathrooms, coffee, these type of things, changing rooms, possibilities, and so on. You have that at the Boston bombing. The first bomb went off, and the Boston Globe went out and said there will be a bomb drill right opposite the entrance to the public library. And do you know the address, the street address in Boston? Boylan Street 666. That is exactly where the bomb went off. They love these numbers. And by the way, this Christmas market was the 33rd Christmas market outside the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church. So here we have it. And also in Copenhagen, when the shooting was outside the synagogue, it is right outside the public library in Copenhagen. And when they blew up the government building in Oslo, it is right outside the public library. So since I noticed that it seems like this is what they do, I had a look here as well. And here, right in the middle of this pyramid-shaped area, on the 15th floor, you have a library, and that library has a perfect view of the whole, like a panoramic view over this crime scene. Just like the building 7, Tower 7 at 9/11, where it seems like the whole operation was carried out from that the headquarters of the operation was in building 7, and that is one of the reasons they took that tower down as well, or building down. So I would suggest that it's possible that this is where the operation was controlled from, on the 15th floor of the Astoria, Hotel Astoria.
That's very interesting, Ole. You mentioned the Boston bombing, and since there's a big Marky Mark movie coming out, a Hollywood movie celebrating the patriotism, the patriotic way the city of Boston and the police reacted to the Boston bombing. Great big Hollywood movie coming out here. I'd like to mention that in that movie, I've not seen it, but I think it's very unlikely that the Kraft associates, the men dressed in black gear that had Kraft patches on their uniforms that were present on the ground that day and had backpacks very similar to the one that is said to have been carried by the terrorists. I bet the movie will not mention the presence of those Kraft International tactical teams on the ground in Boston that day. Just another anomaly that we in the fake media like to point out.
I tell you, I can guarantee you that it's not. I guarantee you. Then also I would like to point out that we're talking about Israel and the involvement of these PSYOPs things and so on. When the Copenhagen shootings was, where a synagogue was attacked and other things, there were some buses, white buses, driving around in Copenhagen, where it says evacuate on them. Evacuate in big letters, evacuate. And right after the attack, Benjamin Netanyahu, from Israel, the leader of Israel, he went out and said the exact same words: we need to evacuate the Jewish population from countries like Denmark back to Israel. We need to evacuate. Then when the attacks at the Bataclan and so on in Paris happened, there were at least four buses driving around with posters on the back of them saying occupied. And well, maybe they were just driving around. No, they were driving around and also being led in behind the police when they had cut off the crime scenes and so on. So they were not just ordinary vehicles. And then here, when you have this photographer who is walking around, who is a German journalist from the Berlin Morgenpost, he was the guy who was there 90 seconds after the whole thing, walking around. When you see he comes up and he pans over towards where the truck is standing, right in the background, a bus is slowly passing by, and on the side there are no images, just big letters where it says alles von Relevanz, and that means everything is relevant. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if just one more of these part of the psyop that often they put it right in our face, and it's, if we don't react, then the bad karma is on us. It's up to us to wake up. They will make it obvious. They will put in all of these different hints and clues. It's almost like a Dan Brown novel, I tell you, because there's so much information baked into this pie, and but we need to find the clues.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, I'll tell you what. Ole Dammegard, whose website is lightonconspiracies.com, is one of the preeminent false flag researchers and truth tellers on the planet, and we're very lucky to call him a friend. Ole, I think your suggestion about this being part 1 is a great idea, and in part 2 we will discuss in detail the assassination of the Russian ambassador to Turkey. And guys, this is information that'll knock your socks off. This is very important stuff, probably that's never been shared anywhere. So be sure to tune in to part 2. So for now, Ole, we'll part ways, and I want to thank you so much for your time. You're a good friend and a good man.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's a real honor to be on your show.
All right, guys, stay tuned for part 2. We'll get that posted just as soon as possible. I'll try to put a link to it at the end of this video. And we appreciate your support at SGTreport.com. Real news, 24/7. God bless.
The people that are still under the deception of swallowing everything CNN and NBC and all these guys feed them, they're going to take it hook, line, sinker. Oh yeah, aliens, ancient, megalithic, whatever, the gods created us, whatever, Prometheus, the movie was true, or whatever the narrative is going to be.